Well, I'm finally here, the place where it all started. Welcome to Secrets of London with me, Mark Monroe. Now, as most of you already know, I'm a London taxi driver, and today is a very special day for me. I've been invited to the LEVC production plant here in Coventry. I'm going to share with you some secrets about this vehicle I'm sure will surprise you, as well as showing you around the production line. So let's waste no time, get inside and take a look. The new 550,000 square foot purpose-built facility in Anstey Park is the new manufacturing and headquarters for the London Electric Vehicle Company. LEVC is home to over 600 office and assembly line staff. First of all, a few words with the man at the top overseeing its production. I'm here with Jörg Hoffmann, the CEO of LEVC. Jörg, thank you for inviting me here today and letting me film around. It's a great privilege as a London taxi driver and a real treat. I'm very familiar with the vehicle itself as I've been driving it for 2 years.
Sure.
But I'm not familiar with the history of LEVC and TX. Could you fill me in with a little bit of that, please?
We are, as you know, a very iconic British brand. So actually, myself and all the team, we are really proud to work for such a unique, iconic British brand. And I mean, as you know, the history goes back more than 100 years. It started in 1908 when the company at that time called Mann and Overton started to build the first, taxi cab at that time. So it was the first purpose-built taxi for London. 1908, 100 years ago. And I mean, then the history was quite a history of ups and downs. You know, the company name changed a few times. It was London Taxi Company, London Taxi International. And another product milestone, I think is worth to mention, was in 1989, where basically we introduced the Fairway to the market. It was the first taxi in the world with standard wheelchair access. It was quite a revolution, actually. And again, the history was one of ups and downs. And then finally, in 2000, I have to think about 2013. In 2013, the International Chile Group bought, at that time, the London Taxi Company, invested a lot of money. We set up a new vision for the company, a new direction. The new direction was quite clear. We wanted to go into the direction of electric vehicles. And this led to a change of the company's name. First of all, in 2017, when the company name was changed to London Electric Vehicle Company. You know, that's what we're doing here, building electric vehicles. And then in 2018, we launched the car that you are driving, Mike, that you see behind us mainly. There's the first electric taxi in the world, the first purpose-built taxi in the world still. And then 1 year later, we launched our new electric van in 2019. And so far, I think that taxis that we are talking about has been a big success story. We sold about 5,000 electric taxis already since the launch in 2018. So, I mean, we believe it's a great history, exciting history. And again, we are a strong, iconic, 100-year-old British brand. We are proud of that.
Fantastic. Like I said, I've been driving the vehicle for 2 years now, and it's been a real treat for me. It's a real game changer as far as a London cabbie going to work. It's made a complete difference to my working day. What about any future plans for fully electric?
Well, I mean, first of all, as you know, our car is always driven by an electric motor.
Absolutely.
We have a 31 kilowatt battery on board with a pure electric range of more than 80 miles. So it's always driven by the electric motor, very important. But on top of that, as you also know, we have this e-city technology, range extender technology, which is quite unique because with that one, when the battery goes empty, runs empty, we have a little generator engine on board which can recharge the battery again, which allows us overall a range of more than 300 miles, which is quite important. And you being a taxi driver, you know better than all of us, the range is really important. And you can't afford, I guess, Mike, having any range anxiety, right? And with our concept, what we can give you more than 80 miles zero emission, but we can also guarantee you an overall range of more than 300 miles. Yeah. So what we are saying, electric drive without range anxiety. Yeah. And this answers the question actually much more precisely because the battery technology is not at a point yet where a pure electric vehicle can guarantee you the range that you need. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of development going on. I mean, the whole battery technology is changing, and I'm 100% sure that in a couple of years away from now, there are batteries at a good price with enough range. But it's still a couple of years away, and in the meantime, batteries can't give you the range that you need. So you would have range anxiety which you can't afford. So we believe still, for the time being, the next couple of years, we certainly believe our technology is the best for the technical environment.
Now, recently I've been driving around London and I've been seeing a vehicle that looks like a taxi, but isn't a taxi. Now, let's talk a little bit about the LEVC van, which I can see behind me as well.
Exactly.
There's been a little bit of diversification going on here.
Yeah, diversification is a good point. Actually, what we are trying to do, or what we are doing, we are basically expanding the model range, the product range of the company. And what we are doing here with our new electric van, VN5, it's a mid-size van. And it's built on the same platforms than our taxi. It has the same e-city technology, a very strong turning circle, as you know.
Absolutely.
But it's a van because what we identified is that the market for electric commercial vehicle is absolutely growing. It's a future growth segment, just amazingly driven by what we call the e-commerce business. E-commerce is growing, especially also driven by COVID. E-commerce is growing, and you need zero-emission cars that can deliver the goods and the parcels to the end customer. So this is a segment that our new electric van is targeting, and we see a huge growth potential. And the first orders that we get already have more than 300 around in the UK.
And overseas?
Overseas, we started now in Germany. We have already also almost 100 cars there. Yeah, so this will be a good success in the future.
And finally, Jörg, how do you see the future of LEVC?
Well, I mean, first of all, the vision that we have is we want to be the leading European green commercial vehicle provider. That's a vision that we have. I mean, and as you can see, we started with the electric taxi. Now we launched our first electric van. And I'm talking about electric commercial vehicles. I mean, you don't need too much fantasy to understand there is more to come. We have a mid-size van at the moment. I mean, you can make your own ideas what can come next. There's certainly space above and below. And there are other electric commercial products that are quite interesting that we are investigating. So in a nutshell, we certainly will expand our range of electric commercial vehicles.
So in short, exciting times ahead.
100%. So we are quite happy and quite excited about that as well.
It was then time to make my way across the factory floor and find out exactly what manufacturing processes go into making this state-of-the-art vehicle. I've arrived here in the body shop and I'm here with the Manufacturing Operations Director, Mofid. Thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you for coming.
Now, before we go into how the body shop here works, I do know the green credentials of my own taxi, which I've been driving around London for 2 years now. But what I wasn't aware of was the green credentials of this production facility here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it does make sense just to build a green vehicle. You also should aim to build it green. So if you look at our factory, we generate electricity from solar panels. We recycle water, rainwater, so actually we harvest it and use it for our washing facility and toilets. And we also use heating recirculation of the building, so in order to make sure that we use as little energy as possible.
Incredible. So during the manufacturing of my taxi, it was manufactured in a green way, and it's not only a green vehicle in its own right. Definitely.
Because it doesn't make sense to build just a green vehicle if you do it inefficiently, also, and you waste a lot of natural resources to do that.
And as far as the plant running with these green credentials, does it save economy-wise?
It does save, obviously, economy-wise. Obviously, if you don't have to pay for electricity, that always helps, especially in these times where the electricity providers are increasing their prices.
Fantastic. So Mofid, we're in the body shop. Can you talk me through the process of what is actually going on here?
Okay, We are, as you said, in the body shop. We built the body of the TX and the VN here in the body shop, which is an aluminium monocoque. Yes, you've heard right. It's 100% aluminium. We don't use any steel. And we take 400 individual components and we glue them together. Those car parts go behind you. You can see the adhesive robots before they get into the subassembly. And then they are baked at 185 degrees for 20 minutes, a little bit like the pizza.
So my taxi has been baked?
Has been baked for 20 minutes at 185 degrees. Just for future reference, if you want to put your pizza in the oven.
And after that, what toppings do you put on that pizza?
We put what we call the cold cure line. We put all the pre-painted panels, which are SMC panels. They're, in layman's terms, plastic panels. We glue them on as well before those vehicles enter the vehicle assembly hall.
Right, how long does it take for the vehicles to go through that process?
Around 40 stations, or in our terms, 2 days.
2 days, and then they're ready for the assembly line.
Ready for the assembly line. But before they go into the assembly line, we quality check the bodies. We check them for water tightness, for cosmetics, but also for dimensional accuracy. So we measure over 1,000 points on our CMM, which is also on our right-hand side behind us.
So that's an intensive quality control.
Definitely.
Before the production line receives it.
Definitely, because what we don't want is to build a body which has got missing holes or dimensional inaccuracy, which later will create an issue in the vehicle assembly hall.
I hear that there is aerospace technology involved in the production of this vehicle. Is that common in the industry?
No, normally in the automotive industry you would use aluminium or steel welded structures, but we use really 100% aerospace technology. We bond the entire aluminium structure together, like planes are bonded and riveted together.
Like Boeing and Airbus,
exactly.
They use the same technology.
Same technology because it creates lightweight and a lot of rigidity. Our structure is around about 2 to 3 times more rigid than an aluminium or steel welded structure. Actually, the testing, if you test our vehicle, you can pull the aluminium plaques together apart, and it will give you 2 times the result, which is 3.4 tons of pull force.
That's an incredible number. It's nice and reassuring to know, as a taxi driver, for my passengers, that you're getting into a vehicle that has the same technological design as a plane that takes you around the world.
That's important because we expect that our taxis last longer. They have got a longer durability cycle. A normal average vehicle, a life expectancy is between 8 and 10 years. We need to make sure that our cars last 15 to 20 years.
It was really reassuring to know that the vehicle that I was driving shared the durability, strength and technologies of today's modern aircraft. Next, the assembly line, where things really started to take shape. We've made our way from the body shop now into the heart of the production hall. What is going on here?
So this is where the body, which we discussed before, becomes a car. So behind me what you'll see is the pre-trim line and the trim lines. We put the vehicle on the EMS carrier, which is actually a monorail system. And that monorail system, after it went through pre-trim, will go onto one of the AGVs. It's an automated guided vehicle. That automated guided vehicle drives the vehicle into the trim line, where we actually fit everything the customer can see. From interior, over glazing, over doors, over sunroofs, etc.
And anything the customer ordered specifically?
Exactly.
Right, so whatever I ordered, you guys were here. There was someone over there putting that together for me.
Yes, so we have got the final sequencing and kitting area, but as well as our highly technological screens which tell the operator which option to fit on the car.
It was great to see the vehicle being assembled so professionally on this assembly line. All those familiar components that surround me every day when I'm driving in London. now finding a new home on a new vehicle. We've arrived here finally at the end of the production line. I'm surrounded by these wonderful shiny black taxis. They look amazing. Can you tell me what quality checking processes go together to get them in this fabulous condition?
Additionally to the production line processes, once the car comes off the production line behind us, they go what we call into the end of line. In the end of line, we do every little quality check you can imagine, from wheel alignment, headlamp adjust, engine calibration, E-rut offset, squeak and rattle track, monsoon, water testing, polishing, checking the interior for any scratch and damages, and checking the paint for any little blemishes. So there's quite an intensive process afterwards, which is around about 2 to 3 days actually just to get the cars through the quality control area.
Absolutely, that is extensive and intensive, so the customer can be sure they're getting a perfect product.
Nothing is worse than an unsatisfied customer. That's the reason why it's important to make sure that the customers get a really good quality product from us.
Absolutely, and I can adhere to that. My product was absolutely perfect, so thank you, Mofid, for building my taxi. Let's look a little bit to the future. Expanding capacity with the TX. How is that looking?
So our factory is geared up to do between 22 and 24,000 vehicles a year. We currently run around between 3,000 and 4,000 cars, and therefore we can expand capacity quite significantly. We have got in essence of around about 90 odd stations, but we can extend that to 120 plus stations, and we can run twice as fast cycle times. And put additional shifts on, so we've got a long way to go, but we have got the capacity to satisfy the customer needs.
And that flexibility within the company as well, to expand if required and when required.
Definitely. And that's from a product perspective, so we can run multiple products, but also from a capacity perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mofid.
You're welcome.
LEVC are certainly a company that can quickly adapt to demand and supply issues. Now that the finished product has been thoroughly inspected for quality, let's take a look at what the vehicle has to offer. I've made my way into the showroom. I'm here with Alistair Fairgrieve. Thank you very much for meeting me, first of all.
Nice to meet you.
Before Alistair shows us the unique features of the LEVC TX, its hidden secrets as it were, Alistair, you're the global product manager. Can you tell me more about your involvement in the day-to-day running of the production plant?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with LEVC now for 5.5 years. So I joined before TX even turned its first wheel. And really my job is to make sure that the products we deliver, the products that we sell to customers, are the products that our customers want. And really the interesting thing about TX is designing not only the next generation of London taxi, but taking that product to a global audience and adapting it and changing it, improving it to meet not only the needs of Londoners today and London cabbies, but of the growing e-mobility market worldwide.
Alistair, we're going to go into the unique features now. Now, I know a couple of those being a London taxi driver myself, especially the unique turning circle, which came about because of this very tiny roundabout at the end of Savoy Court, the Savoy Hotel, to get the taxis in and out. And now we use it obviously to quickly pick our passengers up and turn around the narrow streets and end up in the other direction, which is fantastic. I can do a full turn in Savoy Court, just left hand down, and that's it.
Yeah.
Can you go through some of those other hidden features that exist within the taxi?
First and foremost, a taxi needs to look like a taxi. It needs to be recognisable. So if you're designing a passenger car, you might want to make that car look sporty or aggressive, or you might want it to look very different from the previous generation, which may be 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. A taxi is first and foremost a working vehicle with a long working life, so we need something that continues to look fresh. We want something which is more welcoming, which is friendlier, and we want something which has a graphic signature that you recognise from 100, 150 yards down the road. Because we all know when you're looking for a taxi, it's in the distance, it's not next to you like this one. So the design is very important. You want something which is has that iconic shape, that iconic silhouette, which is absolutely immediately identifiable. which is contemporary, but which is also quite timeless, which doesn't age quickly.
Yes.
So this is why you get this rather elegant, simplistic overall design language.
Yeah, Alistair, can you just talk about these unique coach doors, which I find invaluable when dropping off passengers at the Savoy Hotel, because obviously they open in this direction.
One of my favourite features actually is the coach doors, as you point out, which is something that harks back to the days of the Fairway from the 80s, and we lost that moving to the products throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. The reason for the coach doors is actually a very practical one. If you're trying to package a set of door hinges, if you put those door hinges here, you've got to have a space for those door hinges. You've got to have a pillar, and that reduces the overall width that the door aperture can be. If you're able to hide those door hinges over the wheel arch, because you can't have a door here, there's a wheel in the way, but if you put the hinges here, you get to use the entire space as opening door aperture.
See, something like that I'd never known.
Yeah, so there's an engineering reason that's much better for every passenger. It's particularly useful when you're trying to get wheelchairs loaded, more elbow room for loading wheelchairs. But actually, despite all of that, for me, the cool thing about the doors is just that sense of occasion and that sense of drama.
Absolutely,
and the fact that it's a bit special.
Majestic. So I'd like to say that when the doorman at the Savoy, when this vehicle turned up for the first time, they loved the coach doors because they can open the door like this. The entrance is here, and the lady can elegantly glide into the building without having to walk around the door, which was very awkward before. So these doors are a godsend for the doorman who are running the front doors of the big hotels in London as well.
Yeah. There's also there's lots of other benefits. One thing I particularly like is as you approach the vehicle, because you're on this end of the door, you're interacting with the driver. You know, I need a fare. Can I get in? You've got that kind of personal relationship with the driver before you've even got in. You're in view of the driver as you get in. You can keep you in view in his mirror, make sure you're safe, make sure
the communication is so much more easier as a driver.
Exactly. It's more of a shared experience. So yes.
So and then we can. And that's part of the accessibility that makes it so easy.
Yes.
The accessibility for disabled passengers is equally as accommodating, isn't it?
Absolutely. So a London taxi should work for everybody, regardless of their requirements, whether they are hard of hearing, whether they have vision impairments, whether they have physical impairments. A taxi should work for all of those people. And it should do that in a way which is inclusive, not in a way which makes them feel like they're having to travel in a different or special way. So all of the features that make TX great for users of different abilities make it great for everybody. Everyone benefits from a big door aperture, ease of controls, and that sort of thing.
And moving on to that accessibility for disabled passengers, the ramp, which a lot of people don't know where it's going to appear from. Could you show our viewers exactly
absolutely.
where that is? Now, this is part of the taxi that is very well hidden. And a lot of my customers are surprised when I open the door and they realise that there's a huge ramp built into this vehicle. So Alistair's going to show us exactly where that is.
The ramp deploys from the side of the vehicle. That's really important because you're not expecting the wheelchair user to travel into the road, into the path of traffic to load into the vehicle. You're also able to load from the curb, and that reduces the difference in height between the road surface and the vehicle. If you add to that how high the floor of TX is, which is very low actually, it's a very easy vehicle to step into. That difference, that incline is much lower, so it's much easier to load the wheelchair.
So are you going to put me through my paces and
I'll give you a
shall
test.
I show you?
Give me a test. I can do it first if you like.
Go on then, Alistair.
So the idea of the ramp is, as I say, to get people into the cab as quickly as possible. It's always going to take time to secure the passenger, but we want to get him in and out of the rain and comfortable as fast as possible. So everything is integrated within the sill.
And here we go. Ramp deployment.
Let's pause out. It's a one-piece ramp. It has these guide rails at the side to keep the wheelchair user on track. And that's it. In 10 seconds, you're ready to load that wheelchair user.
Yeah.
And as I say, normally you would be loading from the curb. So you've got a very small height differential. So on a typical curb, and there's no such thing as a typical curb in London, but somewhere around 10 or 11 degrees of incline, which is much easier for your back loading in wheelchair users day after day.
And I can guarantee that working with this ramp, as opposed to the old diesel TX ramp, is far easier. It's 10 seconds, and within another 10 seconds, the customers are in and secure within the vehicle. So it's a fantastic development for this wonderful vehicle, and it's a back saver and a life saver.
Yeah. The next key thing for getting wheelchair users in is how efficient we can be with the space. The whole point of a taxi is it's got the maximum practicality and the smallest footprint, so it's not taking up space on the road. So the wheelchair user sits facing forwards. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that it's to a standard, a safety standard, which is called ISO 10542, and that prescribes a certain level of safety, the way the occupant is restrained, to ensure that they have a safe travelling experience. And the other reason is wheelchair users would like to face forward just like the rest of us. That's the preference. You're able to see where you're going, you're able to interact with the driver much more easily, and of course access all of the controls for heating and ventilation, intercom, window switches, reading lights, all that sort of stuff. To do that, we've had to be quite clever with the space. So the first issue you'll come across as you manoeuvre the wheelchair into position is there's a seat in the way. So what we've done is enabled a hidden mechanism for the driver that allows you to fold that seat out of the way and create more knee space for the wheelchair user. The next issue is, if you think of the shape of the human body, your feet are the part which protrudes farthest forwards. We've scalloped all of the interior trim panels, so we've used every last millimetre of space around the floor area to ensure that the passenger's feet are able to position into room.
And can you tell me a little bit more about the partition, how that was integrated into the vehicle and what it means to the passenger today?
Yeah, so the partition is something which has been a fundamental part of London taxi design since the 50s.
It's always been there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it serves several purposes. The first, of course, is from the passenger perspective. It gives you a sense of privacy. So if you need to have a private conversation, either with your fellow passengers or on the telephone, you're able to do that without feeling like the driver is listening to you. Or even if you just want your own personal space, you've had a long day, you just want to sit in the relaxed, quiet environment on your own, and it gives the ability to do that whilst keeping visibility. Of course, if you need to talk to the driver, you've got an intercom and you're able to converse very, very easily with the driver. And the flip side of that is if you think of a driver who's working long hours late at night on his own, as I'm sure you've had many times in all areas of the town, it's that sense of protection and security that allows you to do the job confidently.
Alistair, what I've found over the last 18 months, which has been a real asset for me driving this taxi in London, is the partition has made my customers feel secure, feel safe in an aerated, safe environment. Obviously, nowadays customers want as minimal contact as possible.
Yes.
The partition has been fantastic for that, and it's always mentioned when they get it into the vehicle. So, yeah, to many extents, it is very much more a COVID secure vehicle, if there is such a thing.
Exactly, almost by accident, that it separates those two volumes of air, and of course it does that. And because this is a factory-built, fully European type-approved vehicle, it does that in a way which is as safe, as long-lasting, and as usable as possible. We haven't had to resort to sort of temporary measures to meet those COVID requirements.
I believe there's actually been a smoke test to prove that there is hardly any sort of bleed from atmosphere in the front cabin into the back cabin, which is important. That test has been done, and you can literally see that happen.
Exactly, and that was a fun day's filming actually with the smoke machine and several taxis, several setups, exactly, just to see how the smoke moves around the vehicle.
Brilliant.
And understanding the size of particles and the effect that has.
Yeah, and the feed into the back cabin was minimal.
Exactly, very, very, very minimal.
So it just goes to show you're safer in the back of the back cab.
For many reasons. Aspects. Yes, for more aspects than just the traditional ones. Yeah. So wheelchair accessibility, or rather accessibility inclusivity, is not just about people in wheelchairs, people with specific physical needs. There are a whole range of passenger requirements and needs. One of the features which is most loved by passengers, but actually one of the least known, a secret if you will, is the swivel seat. So if you think of perhaps an elderly person who has mobility issues, they struggle with bending and twisting, we're actually able to load those passengers into the taxi before they're in the taxi, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So the driver has access to control this swivel seat. So the whole seat pivots outside the vehicle. You're able to get the passenger comfortable and seated, and then without them having to twist or bend or duck, you can then unlock the seat and pivot them back round into the vehicle. I also mentioned that the step height is very low, so off a typical curb there is no step to get into the vehicle, it's a flat transition. Of course, if you need to pick someone up perhaps from a rank, or the Savoy is a great example, outside of a hotel where there is no curbstone, the floor is already flat, even that very low step height, some passengers find more difficult to get in. Of course, the driver's there and able to help them, and that's part of the service, but sometimes people like to feel independent, they like to be able to get in under their own steam.
Every situation is different, every passenger is different. You just have to adapt accordingly, and at the same time remember you've got some fantastic equipment here to help you. As a taxi driver, I know that, so get involved. You can always communicate with the passengers around London and give them the best service you can.
So we've got quite a cool piece of origami here.
Yep, this is the going back bit.
So this ramp is a ramp, but what it can also be, do it in the right place. We can very quickly convert that into a step, and that halves the height, the step up height required, and allows people to climb into the vehicle from the flat floor. And of course, in conjunction with that, we've got a very high aperture. We've got grab handles either side of the doorway and above. It just makes it that much more easy to get in.
And how would you dismantle that? Not dismantle it, put that back to its original.
Yeah, as they say, disassembly is the opposite of assembly. So you just lift the front edge upwards, pull it towards you. That releases the flap, and then you can just pivot it round and drop it back into there, and then you lock it back across there that way. Then that's locked back in position, and then stowing it is just the right amount of pressure to get that lever to lock back in.
Right, yeah, just push the lever back in, and
that'll allow that to close.
There is no seat in the front of the TX. A lot of customers from around the world, a lot of my passengers jump and dive to the front door, open this up, and the look on their faces is incredible when they realise there isn't a seat there. And I tell them this is where the luggage goes.
You've got your bags in your hand, you're approaching the taxi, and you want to put your luggage in. It's a strange feature of a London taxi to a lot of people that the luggage actually goes in the front of the vehicle, not in the boot. But if you think about it rationally, why would I want to walk around the vehicle, into the road, into the path of traffic, and put my luggage in the boot behind me where I can't keep an eye on it? It's actually far more convenient to load my luggage into the front here. It's from curbside. I can keep an eye on it. It's there when I get out of the vehicle. It's far more convenient. And that's always been the way. That's always been a requirement of a London taxi. And as you say, it's something that actually a lot of people don't even realise exists.
Absolutely, they don't. I also get some customers going around to the back of the vehicle, opening up the boot, and then realising there's just a spare wheel in there. So more surprises for the passengers that enter this taxi in London.
Quite a cool little feature. A lot of passengers are happy to take their own bags and to walk, get on with their day. They don't need the driver's help. But you'd be surprised how many passengers unload their bags and just walk off. And you can imagine now, I don't know how many times you've had to do this in other vehicles, but get out the cab, maybe take the key out of the ignition, walk round, close the door. It become incredibly frustrating. So we've solved that with a very high-tech and very sophisticated piece of string. So works. From the driver's compartment, you're very easily able just to pull the door and carry on. What we tried to do here is create the maximum amount of space in the smallest possible footprint, because London streets are tight, city streets are tight, you need to keep that small footprint. So we created physical space in the way that the seats are shaped, in the way that the seats are offset to create more personal space, but also part of creating space is to create a feeling of space. And as we know from good architecture, if you watch design programs, the more natural light you can bring into a space, the more uplifting, the more spacious it feels. So we've got these deep windows, give great views out, let a lot of light in, but perhaps the biggest feature people notice when they step into the vehicle is this huge full-length panoramic glass roof.
I think that's probably the feature that I get the most comments about when the passengers are sat on the back seat, and then there's a moment of realization, and I've heard it thousands of times. Oh my God, look at that amazing roof.
Yeah.
That's the reaction. It's literally takes their breath away. And so much of London is above the eye line.
Absolutely, yeah. All of that, those incredible architecture and structures.
It's a real treat for the passengers. Yeah. I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
We've got the, inside the vehicle, I offer Wi-Fi in my vehicle. So I can literally get 6 passengers in here, take them to the office, and they can in effect have a mini business meeting in the back of the cab.
Yes.
So utilize their time perfectly.
Yes, and that's one of the key benefits of the interior space, that, as you say, if you're travelling with work colleagues, or even if you're on a night out, it's a social space. You're able to interact with the people you're travelling with.
Finally, it was time to take a closer look at those vital hidden components that make this vehicle both smart and powerful in equal measure. So let's strip it down and reveal those secrets.
So this is what we call our technical demonstrator. This is, in this instance, it's our van product, which is has the same underpinnings as the TX taxi, with the clothes stripped bare, so you can see underneath. There's a few key elements to what makes a TX under the skin. The most obvious of which is this aluminium body structure. When we were designing the new vehicle, it was very clear that the drivetrain needed to be electric. All of these components are very heavy, so you need to offset that weight somehow, which is why we chose to use an aluminium body shell. So this aluminium allows us to have twice the rigidity, twice the energy absorption of steel, but with 30% less weight. So I talked about this being a fully electric vehicle, and it absolutely is. There is a motor mounted on the rear axle. That motor is always driving, so it doesn't matter what the state of charge is of the battery, whether that range extender is running or not, that motor is always delivering the same amount of power. That motor is fed by a battery, which it sits in the front compartment here. So
in this vehicle, which is slightly different, it's the van.
Yeah, it's the same. It's this bit that's different actually for the van. But in the taxi, it's exactly the same. So the battery sits under the front of the vehicle here.
Yep.
You can see it's in 3 sections, and that's to package it as efficiently as possible in the overall space of the vehicle. So sometimes you see electric vehicles which have been converted from diesel vehicles, and the only option they have is just to hang the batteries underneath, under the floor. We've actually been able to package it inside the vehicle, which gives us more space for the battery, but it also makes it safer. We're able to package it within the structure, so we've actually got structural elements running through the battery area itself.
Fantastic. And so the batteries are there. We've got the electric motor at the back.
Yeah, the bit in the middle, clearly that space is very tight on packaging. We need to make sure that we have good ground clearance for speed bumps, good low floor for access and exit. So we use that space for all of the control electronics. So
is this the brain of the technology, the brain of the vehicle?
It's the brain of the charging system, yeah. So if you think when you're charging on the street, most of the time you're charging on an AC charger, that's mains electricity. That needs to be taken on, converted into DC energy to be able to be stored in the battery. When that comes back out of the battery, it needs to be converted back into AC to drive the motor. So all of those control electronics live under the floor. So getting the turning circle is not just about making the wheels turn, it's about making them turn in the right way. So we've got a very clever suspension setup that as the wheels turn, and these wheels turn to 63 degrees off centre, which, to give you a comparison, a typical passenger car of a similar size would only get to about 38 degrees. So a huge improvement in turning circle. You need to do that in a way that doesn't wear the tyres out, doesn't adversely affect the handling or the stability. You need to do it in a way which doesn't make the wheel protrude either too far out of the vehicle or so far in that it's going to impact with the structures here. And that's one of the reasons we've adopted a 3-cylinder range extender for the petrol generator. Not only is it more efficient, but it's also a smaller package, and that allows more space for that wheel to turn.
And I can certainly testify that this turning circle is an invaluable asset on the streets of London. It saves us time, it gets us out of tricky situations and keeps us moving.
In fact, it's a very high-tech way of building a taxi, or even any commercial vehicle, but the underlying technology is tried and tested. This has been used in sports cars and supercars for 25 years, and actually things like airliners for probably twice that. So although it's very high-tech for a taxi, it's a known, tried and tested technology.
Absolutely. And did you say it saves 30%?
30% like-for-like weight reduction, yes, by moving to aluminium.
If we're going to go on to the other economy savings as far as the engine and the power drive is concerned, what is the overall saving for an average driver, would you say?
Yeah, so we recognise that the transition to clean technology is expensive, and there is an investment required from drivers. But if we can offset that with a reduction in running costs, then that allows drivers to adopt this new technology. If you think of a typical, and there's no such thing as a typical day, as you don't know who's going to get in the back, but if we say a typical day is around 120 miles of driving, in a diesel vehicle at today's fuel prices, you would be spending around £40 a day just in fuel.
Even more now?
Probably more now, yeah. Even before you get into tyre wear, servicing, maintenance, just in fuel you're spending about £40 a day. If you compare that to the way a TX operates, some drivers are able to charge at home. That gives you a full battery for about £3.50 at today's energy prices. That full battery will get you 64 miles that's on the WLTP official cycle. Real world performance can vary, but that's a good average. On a typical day in ambient temperatures, that's a good average. the key is that that's enough for your morning shift. You're able to go out and earn a living on pure electric power for the morning.
Absolutely.
If you're able to stop for half an hour at lunch, that gives you an opportunity to recharge that battery and do the same again in the afternoon. Obviously it costs a bit more to charge on the street, you've got to pay for the infrastructure, but at a cost of around £4.50, £5 to top up that battery at lunchtime.
Great.
And if you do get a long range job, you do need to do a few miles on the range extender.
Flick over to the range
Flick over to the range extender and you're getting low to mid 30s miles per gallon. So in a typical day, you'll spend, as a comparison, about £12 a day on.
And also, it's worth remembering that a London taxi driver does not have any sort of anxiety. He doesn't have to worry about where the next passenger is going to go. He knows, he's assured that he can get them there whatever happens.
That's the absolute key to this drivetrain, is nobody knows if the next guy in the back of the cab wants to go 3 miles across town or if he needs to go 150 miles to a train station. And regardless of how big a battery is, you don't run around with a full battery and you can't stop and charge with a passenger on board. So the whole purpose of this is that 95% of the time and 100% of the time in town, it's an electric vehicle. You're getting all of those fantastic emissions benefits, but it can still do the job. It can still be a taxi. It can still take someone from Manchester to Edinburgh and run on the motorway as a normal vehicle, and it gives that flexibility. And if that gets drivers out of their diesel cabs into electric cabs, then that's what it's intended to do.
That's exactly right. And I can say with my passengers, the first thing they do ask me, because they know the vehicle is new, they can see that, they ask me, is this electric? And I say it is, the first, and then they say, it's very quiet, it's very comfortable, it's a very smooth ride. They then ask me how many miles does it go, and then I explain to them, don't worry, we can get you anywhere in the country. That's not for you to worry about. So yeah, all those questions are answered, and it's something that passengers can jump into with confidence, knowing they can go absolutely anywhere.
Absolutely, and in the future we will all get to a place where fully battery electric vehicles are viable for everybody as vehicle technology advances, but more importantly as the charging infrastructure advances. We will get there, but today, with today's challenges and today's opportunities to improve the environment in London, we believe this is the right drivetrain for the job.
Thanks for watching Secrets of London with me, Mark Monroe, and a big thank you to everyone here at LEVC for showing me around and being so welcoming. I think one of the things I'll leave with today is the realization that a taxi like mine just doesn't happen overnight. There are years of research, development, design, technology, and many talented men and women that all come together to create what is, in my opinion, the best taxi in the world. And well, I would say that, wouldn't I? But don't take my word for it. All of my passengers that get into my taxi in London tell me it is. And they can't be wrong.